Well, welcome everybody to the Iowa.net user group. See a lot of new faces here. I'm guessing a lot of people are friends of Page's and love to come and listen to what he has to say. I know that I do. My name is Dustin Thostinson. I've been one of the leads at the Iowa.net user group for maybe 15 years now. We've been around for over 2 decades. A lot of the work originally was in-person meetings. Our primary focus is on covering topics around the Microsoft stack. It started with a lot of C# and into Azure, but we also recognize that in the current development world, most of us are polyglots. We're doing full stack development, so we really try to kind of bring content to the community that's going to help people not only in the technical areas but really all aspects. And I think that really speaks well to what Paige is going to be covering today. Um, we do meet usually the first Thursday of every month. Sometimes we do noon meetings, sometimes we do our night meeting like this one, sometimes in person, often virtual, especially after COVID. We've got a 5-1 and a 6-5 meeting set up. Scott Sauber, he's a Microsoft MVP, one of our leads. I don't see his topic yet, but that'll be in person. But then on
Mhm.
6-5, June 5th, Jimmy Engstrom is going to be talking something Blazer is our notes. I don't know if that's the formal talk or if we're just going to kind of TBD that. But anyways, enough about us. Our sponsors today are Robert Half Technologies. I don't know if anybody from Robert Half is here. They've been a great sponsor for many years. It allows us, especially when we have in-person events, to create time to get the community together and spend more time one-on-one with each other. Uh, so Paige is our guest. Paige and I have worked together. I consider him a great friend. He's a wonderful human being with great insights. And I'm really hoping that everybody enjoys this talk as much as I'm expecting to. Thank you,
Great.
Paige.
Yeah, thank you. I very much appreciate the kind words. Um, I, I I enjoy hanging out with Dustin and I'm glad to see all of you here. First, it is a very new talk, meaning this is the first time I've given it. So please, please be gentle. And I also I tend to like to have discussions throughout my talk. So if you have something, if you want to put something in the chat, if you want to raise your hand, whatnot. This one's a little different for me because I tend to be more technical, like, here's how you write code and here's what you do and whatnot. And so um, this will be really interesting. It came out of Agile Open Northwest, where several of us here were a couple weeks ago, and we had a great session on neurospicy people and how we deal with work and that sort of thing. And I thought, gosh, I bet there's a talk in there. So this is my attempt to make something of it. So let's see here. A second. Okay. All right. So first off, I am not a medical expert. I'm not even an expert on ADHD outside of my own experiences. Right? So if you do want to know more about ADHD or think you have it or whatever, please talk to a medical professional, and not me. Although I'm happy to talk about my experiences, I guess. The other thing, ADHD is different for everyone that has it. Uh, this is all about my experiences as a software developer with ADHD. Uh, it's probably and could be different from what you or others experience. So I just want to offer my insight and not sort of a this is how you should work type of thing. All right. So here's the scenario. I sit down at my desk with my fresh cup of coffee and ready to tackle the day of writing amazing code. And the moment my fingers hit the keyboard, the world sort of disappears. I'm in the zone. I reach over, I grab my coffee to take a sip, and it's ice cold. again, right? I think I see a lot of shaking heads, right? So I take a sip anyways, and I realize, you know what? I never ate lunch either, right? Sounds familiar? This is my life with ADHD. It's not just about distraction. It's about how focus, flow, and sometimes forgetting to function, uh, you know, affect me. But here's the thing, ADHD didn't just challenge me as a developer, it made me better. So, attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, or ADHD, is a neurodevelopmental condition that affects how a person regulates their attention, their impulses, and activity levels. It's not about having no attention, it's really about having inconsistent control over where that attention goes. You can think of it like sometimes I can't focus at all, and other times I can't stop focusing, right? ADHD often involves this difficulty to start or finish tasks, trouble with organizing or memory, emotional regulation challenges like frustration or rejection sensitivity, and a need for stimulation. For me, being bored feels physically painful, right? And it's not a lack of intelligence or effort, it's a different brain wiring. And once I understood that, I started to find ways to work with it and not against it. People think ADHD is just this inability to focus, and it's not. It's an inability to control focus. My brain doesn't ask me what I want to focus on, it just decides, and I'm kind of along for the ride, right? One moment I'm in a meeting and I'm nodding and I'm taking notes and I'm trying to stay engaged. And the next, my brain catches a random thought. Hey, what if compilers had feelings? And suddenly, I'm down this internal rabbit hole thinking about it, and everyone else is just they keep talking, keep talking. Every once in a while you get the what do you think page, and you're like, right? And then there's hyper focus, which is the opposite. ADHD brains do lock onto things, they don't let go. Hours disappear and responsibilities are gone. Did you ever realize at 3 p.m. that you spent an entire day refactoring one function and you had committed to getting something totally different delivered that day? And you missed a very important meeting where you were supposed to be the presenter? Yeah, that may have happened to me more than once, probably. But that's the kind of flip side of distraction. And the coffee thing, it's just kind of a metaphor. I start a task, I forget about it. I start another task, I kind of forget about it. It's half finished cups of coffee as code everywhere. So let me talk a little about uh, where I was so that you can kind of understand where I am now. Here are some of the main issues that kind of I was facing in my work and in my home life as well, but definitely in my work. Okay? It's really easy for me to get overwhelmed. Big projects feel huge. Too many unknowns, and my brain freezes. Like that time I stared at that blank IDE for an hour, unable to start working on that new feature, not because I didn't know what to do, but because I couldn't pick a place to begin. Right? Oh yeah, I see lots of head shaking. That's awesome because I totally freeze when I get overwhelmed and or I run away. That's the other thing. Okay. I like to think of my memory in terms of a short-term memory buffer and a long-term memory hard drive, right? The short-term buffer gets flushed pretty easily. It often doesn't write the data to the hard drive. It's like exiting a video game without saving, and you think, well, maybe it should have saved, but no, it didn't. Um, Sometimes I can't remember what I did yesterday or what the code does. Or I'm constantly rereading or redoing. And my short-term memory is unreliable. Context switching destroys my mental state. Right? So that long-term memory, that hard drive, is a space for important information. The problem is I have a hard time understanding what is important, right? It's very interesting to me that things that are important to me or that I think are important are often not. I don't pick up on that well. And so this is where I make that choice to refactor the entire project to use an eventing system because it will be better in the long run versus working on that feature that was supposed to be done this week. Right? It's shiny, it's lovely, I want to do it. I also have RSD or rejection sensitivity dysphoria. I react strongly to anything that I perceive as rejection. This is not an ADHD thing in terms of ADHD itself, but ADHD has a lot of sort of side and connected modules, right? And RSD is definitely one of them. Um, I a critical comment on a code review could send me spiraling into this self-doubt. We're in a meeting and you ignore my suggestion. Well, clearly I'm terrible at my job, right? You ignored me. Rationally, I know that's not true, but ADHD does not do rational. It does emotions and it does them at full volume often. So I would go to great lengths to avoid any conflict where I could be wrong. And usually this meant meant anything that involved like having to deal with my manager or someone like a senior developer, especially earlier in my career. I can remember sneaking out of the office in the afternoon because I hadn't finished what I had expected to finish. Not because I hadn't finished what I was supposed to do, whatever, but just the stuff that I had expected to get done. And going out the back door so no one would see me, so I wouldn't have to kind of run into that. And, it's really kind of crazy when I look back at it. Also, there's a defiance that comes from RSD that shows up when you tell me no, right? Hey, do you think I should refactor this into a message-based eventing system? No? Well, guess what? I'm going to do it anyways. You can't tell me what to do. This and that's been a rough one for me as well. That's what comes out from my RSD. So years of forgetting conversations or missing meetings or not being able to prioritize importance, it all piles up and it gave me this major case of imposter syndrome. And ADHD makes it harder to track my own wins, right? I would finish a project and instantly forget how much effort it took and how much I needed to actually know to get it done and how I was able to come up with an elegant solution that hadn't been thought of before. All these things, boom, discarded, right? I would put too much importance on what went wrong. And so, of course, I wrote that to the hard drive. And what went well got sort of flushed from the buffer. And that cycle continued over and over and over. And, as developers, we're asked to do some pretty amazing stuff. And when we're asked, can you do this? We are conditioned to answer yes, even if we're unsure, even if we don't think we can, even if we don't know. And of course we can, right? We're developers, right? That's what we do. But there's always this fear in my mind, and I think it's been sort of pounded into me over the years by the industry of like, well, you're a senior developer. You should be able to do that. If you can't do that, we'll hire somebody else that can. Right? And that saying yes when I didn't know if I could and having to say yes so that I and not be afraid for my job reinforced my imposter syndrome. Right? It is my brain kind of goes, yeah, but you failed in this past project and you didn't do this right. And, but I'm lying to them. I'm saying yes. Right. And it's that wash, rinse, repeat, ad infinitum, ad nauseum, over and over. I used to think I have to fix my brain to be a good developer. Right. And it turns out I just needed the right practices. So, what are those practices? Well, collaborative programming, also known as mobbing or ensemble or team programming, has been a godsend. It is amazing. When I work collaboratively, the whole team helps me stay on track, especially when I want to chase those tangents. The real-time feedback I get helps me avoid sort of overthinking. If I'm heading off the rails in one direction, I find it out immediately. I get that feedback either from the work or from the people I'm working with, right? I've learned to value the feedback, and because I'm working with the group on a regular daily basis, I gain a psychological safety as well, right? I used to get questions like, why would you use a for loop there? And that would set off my RSD. That would put me into this spiral of like, what, you think I'm not good enough? Or you must think I'm a terrible developer. And, then I didn't want to talk to you, or then I would want to run away, or, I wouldn't want to have to sort of support my argument because I could be wrong. I'd been wrong in the past. My brain told me so, right? That was the hard drive saved stuff, you know, um, and being able to work regularly in a group actually changes that, allows me to start feeling that that question is not a question. It's not a condemnation of my ability to code. It becomes a question to gain knowledge. Why did you use a for loop there? Did you know what I mean? Is that better than a stream, or is that better than a for each loop? I'm just wondering, and you get comfortable with that, which is immensely helpful for my RSD, and knowledge, of course. I gain knowledge from everybody else I work with. So when we mob, the whole team is responsible for the architecture and the code quality as well. And this shared responsibility helps override my imposter syndrome. It allows me to see other people have different ideas, and other people might be incorrect, and other people don't know, just as I don't know. And so we have that discussion about, well, should we go down this road? Should we do that? Yeah, you were saying this, and that's great. Like that reinforces that, like, hey, we all don't know, but we're all learning together. I don't get as overwhelmed trying to plan in a group, of course. And I don't have to keep track of the entire architecture, nor do I hyper focus on the minutia. Right? My teammates hold context that I don't see or remember. I don't get anxiety about missing a test scenario or which test to write, because they're there to fill in those gaps that I don't have either in my memory, or, sometimes I can be blind to like, oh, I totally forgot about that. I know we talked about it 10 minutes ago. I don't remember talking about that. Excuse me. Often the ability to discuss what we heard in a meeting, like with the business, means that important stuff that I remember hearing is also supplemented with the important stuff that they remember, right? And so we don't just mob as a group, right, in terms of writing code. We mob or we collaborate going to meetings too. You have a meeting scheduled, don't just send one people, send two, send three, right? Send as many as possible, because we're all going to ask different questions. We're all going to hear different things that are important, and we're all going to bring it back. And if it's just one person, especially if it's me, I'm going to be like, well, yeah, they said we should refactor it into a event-based messaging system, right? But that's really not what they said. I had just heard only that part. Anyhow, so that mobbing in meetings or that sort of thing, the collaborative work ensures that we all have a better understanding of context, like when we're done, what next steps are, what did we hear, that sort of thing. Really important for me. There's a thing called body doubling. And body doubling for ADHD is a strategy where someone with ADHD, it doesn't have to be someone with ADHD, but in this case it is, works on a task in the presence of another person. That person doesn't even have to be on the same task. It's just they're in the room, they're sitting next to you or across from you or whatever, and that presence is enough to act as sort of a subtle motivator or encourages focus and helps me to overcome that sort of procrastination or the difficulty of starting. And when we mob, we're all there, right? Having other people focused on the same work makes it easier to continue to focus without getting lost or distracted. Working alone is I would often and I still do when I work on my personal projects, I find myself lost in the code. Like, why was I going down this path? Gosh, I had a plan. I know I had a plan, but I'm not sure what it was. I wrote a test. I wrote a test and I wrote it and I came in here and I was gonna I yeah, I don't remember, right? And then that sort of getting lost becomes really overwhelming really quick, especially if I feel this sort of urgency to finish, if I have a deadline. Oh man, and that leads to freezing or not doing anything or even sort of how do you say it I use the term running away, but more like I know this is important. I know I have to do this. Uh, but I'm frozen and it really bothers me and I'm flooded is another term I've heard. And so I'm gonna go play with my board games for just a few minutes, which turns into a couple hours, right? Right? I run away from that. Um, the really nice thing when I'm in a mob, when I'm working collaboratively, as the driver, I only have to focus on being an input. I only have to listen and do what I'm told, right? Which is really easy because I don't, it doesn't take a lot of brain power. And then when I'm the navigator or I'm navigating with others, everybody else can help me to continue to move forward if I get to that spot or if I forget what I'm doing or that sort of thing. So it's it's a really positive aspect for not getting lost in the code. And remember how I was talking about the cold coffee and the hyper focus, right? In a group, we're all all the time, and that makes becoming exhausted really easy. You lose that brain power really hard. Usually in our, normal people, sorry about the term. I don't want to label anybody, but you're working, you're typing some code, you look at your phone, you type some more code, you kind of look over here and do some stuff, go get it, right? When you're in a mob or when you're working collaboratively, you're on all the time. You need to take breaks regularly. The mobs that I've been in, we use some sort of Pomodoro timer. If you're not sure what that is, that's usually a timer, and you like work for 25 minutes and then you take a 5 minute break, and then you work for another 25 minutes and you take a 5 minute break. It's just a good cadence, and it really helps to make sure that you maintain your cognitive energy. But even if we're not using a Pomodoro timer, usually what someone will say is, "Gosh, we haven't taken a break in a while. Should we do that now?" Right? And whoo, man, 50-10, that's crazy. Um, anyhow, this Pomodoro really good, not just for keeping my brain from getting exhausted, but it also stops the hyper focus. And it often like I take a walk during the break. I go outside. We had certain rules like when we were learning, you you stand up if you can, go outside. If you can't go outside, look outside. Get away from your desk if you can. Don't talk about work, right? And that means don't talk about the stuff that you're working on right now. Talk about work or check your email or whatever, but do something that is not connected directly to the work. Um, and that even getting outside and that sort of thing, really good for my emotional regulation as well. So, um, as a practice for actually writing code, TDD has helped me immensely. My ADHD loves instant feedback, and TDD gives me that. Um, I write a tiny test. I see it fail. I fix it, and bam, dopamine hit. Woo! Right. Some of you, I don't know. I don't see the people that some of the people that I program with regularly. We actually go woo when that passes. So it's kind of fun, and it really is a little dopamine hit. So it's enough to kind of push me on to the next one. And I hate debugging. Debugging requires holding too much in my head, and it's easy to get lost and overwhelmed as I'm stepping from line to line to line to line. And oh my God, where was I? Where was that last break point? You know, TDD means that I rarely debug when I'm writing code. I couldn't even tell you anymore sort of what the hotkey is to debug and step through my code. I'm using small, simple tests to drive the development that also requires me to architect it in a way that it's easy to test and easy to follow. If there's a defect, right? If there's a defect found, we write a test that mimics that defect. And then when that test passes, I can ensure that that defect has been fixed. But when we search for it, sometimes we debug, but I have given up debugging pretty much at all when I'm writing new code. Just doesn't happen anymore. TDD really reduces this mental load, right? I write a test that covers a small unit of code. It tests one thing and one thing only. I know the inputs and the outputs, and I'm able to say this is what goes in, this is what comes out, and I don't have to keep much in my head more than that. That is a huge reduction in cognitive complexity. And if I do feel that that complexity is starting to creep in, if I find myself going, oh, this is really kind of complex, usually that's a flag for me that I need to refactor it into something simpler. And it can be as simple as sort of extracting to a method the code that I've already written and tested so that as I'm going down, I can say like, oh, here's where I do that. I can skip past that and, in terms of keeping track of stuff. Um, so that it really is helpful there. Um, no big upfront design. You shouldn't be doing this anyways. It's horrible. But for me, you know, uh, TDD breaks big, scary stuff into safe, tiny steps. And each test is a checkpoint. And I can stop anytime and not be lost, right? Maybe, usually. But, it's often when I go to lunch or when we take a break, we leave a single failing test, not committed, but a single failing test. So when we come back, we run the test and like, oh, that's where we were. That test is still failing. That's where we were. Great. Now I don't have to go back and like, God, what were we working on? Because it was an hour ago and I don't remember anything, and like, let's go back and look at all the code and figure out what we were doing. I don't need that. I have a single test. Yes, exactly. Parking on a hill. Great. Um, I don't need to hold the entire design in my head before I start work, right? I need to have a roadmap. I need to go know kind of where I'm going. But that's different from designing the entire architecture of the feature or even the work up front. Um, I was talking with someone about this once, and they were saying, we were talking about normal brains versus mine, and they were saying, when they plan something or when they have a project, they look at what the end is supposed to be, and then they sort of slice it as they walk backwards from like all the way back until they get to the beginning. And then they start at the beginning and they do those steps all the way forward to the end. And my problem, again, the importance and other things, comes into this not being able to see importance. But my problem is I can't see that end. I know what it should be. I know kind of what it's like. I know what your requirements that you gave me are. But I have a really hard time visualizing sort of what it's actually going to be at the end. And therefore, it's very hard for me to slice that unknown into littler bits to walk back so that I can start and walk forward again. So, TDD, that test-driven design and test-driven development aspect of it helps me start work. And then as I go, I can sort of figure out, am I still on the pathway? Am I still on the roadmap? And finally, I write my tests as requirements in code format. When I've written and passed tests for all the requirements, I'm done. It's really easy, and people will say, well, but the requirement says that it returns true if it's foo and false if it's bar. But what about all the edge cases? Well, those are actually requirements. They might not be, written out in every story, but they are actually requirements that if you pass null, it should do what? Right? This is the question that I go to the PM with. What should it do if this value is null? Should it throw an exception? Well, okay, there's a requirement. So I'm going to write a test. If null, then throw exception, et cetera, right? So and I write the names in as behaviors that are requirements. So there's less chance of me sort of forgetting or getting overwhelmed with the amount of work, or I can clearly remember years ago thinking, when someone asked me about, did you add this? I'm like, yeah, I think I finished that. Right? I don't do that anymore. Let's see, I'm not sure. If there's a test for it, let's go look at a test. Is there a test for it? Then I did it. If not, I didn't. Okay, let's write one and let's make sure that works. Discovery trees, um, discovery trees came from when we worked at Primera Blue Cross in Washington State. It's the Washington State Blue Cross Insurance. And they started out as notes to ourselves about work to do later. Somebody was like, oh man, we got to add this. And okay, well, let's just write a sticky and put it here. Right. But we often had Woody Zool come in and teach us. And one of the things that he drilled into our head is that we discover the work by doing the work. Right. So discovery trees started out as a way to keep track of stuff to do later, but quickly it became a really quite effective tool for managing tasks for the team. Now, they're not big upfront design. We don't we don't write a sticky for the entire thing, right? That's really important. They do give us clarity as to where we are. Discovery trees help me visualize tasks and there's notes and risks and things like that. You can put all sorts of things in here, right? At a glance, I can get information about where we are and what needs to be next. It's really easy for me to understand what's done and what's in progress. In fact, I bet if you look at this, not even really knowing, even if you're not sure of what discovery trees are, if you look at this image, what's done?
What
Yeah,
crops up?
exactly. If you look at the top four things, if I said to you, if you were a PM or business person and you came through and this, we used to do them on the windows because windows are great whiteboards. And you said, well, how far are you guys on this feature? Like I could look at that and say, well, a little more than 50%. Why? Because the top two things are marked off. They're done. Then somewhere down the line on maybe the third one or the fourth one, there's one that's finished down below, way down below, and in fact, there's two that are finished, so that's more than 50%. Right. So it was a really easy way to keep track of where we were sort of in the process of the work that we know right now. And then it's a little harder to see, but what's in progress? Well, when we started to do work in progress, we would make little ticks in the corner. So you can see some of them have ticks and some don't. When we do this online or remotely using like Miro or Mural or something like that, we actually change the color, which is a lot more helpful than ticks. but you have white is not even started and yellow is in progress and green is done, red is blocked, and then we had a bunch of other colors. We had notes that were blue and but it doesn't matter what the colors are and that sort of thing. It's a visual representation that allows you to see kind of where you're at. And if there's something that I didn't remember, um, I could just add it on there. Right? I think I'm getting a little ahead of myself, but the really nice thing about these, and the same principle as TDD, we break down the tasks so there's until they're so small I don't get overwhelmed. I kind of just do one twig at a time, and I don't have to plan the entire project. I just have to plan until I have enough to start working right now. So this is actually a bigger tree, but we put the first four things on there at the top. What are the four things we need to do to start on this? Or what are some things we need to do? Okay, well, here's four. All right, which one is the most important thing that the app doesn't do right now? Let's start on that. Okay, well, maybe it's this first one. Do we have enough knowledge and are there tasks under this that we could start on right now? Well, no, these four things have to go under this. Okay, so we write out those. Well, let's pick one of those. Can we start on it right now? Yes. Then we stop writing post-its for the discovery tree and we start work. Sort of that bias towards action. Yeah, as I was saying, the really nice thing about this, when you think of something again, like, oh, we can't forget to do this. Well, that becomes another leaf that just goes at the top level or goes whatever level you're working on. Oh, we have to get a certificate for the login page, and okay, let's just put that on there and we'll get to that when it becomes, the next most important thing that the application doesn't do. Before discovery trees, when I would think of like, oh, I got to remember to do this. Yeah, I either do it immediately and implement it and usually then forget what I was doing previously, or it would go on the buffer and that would get flushed, and or I'd make a note of it somewhere in some sort of post-it on my desk that would go in the pile of post-its or in the notebook somewhere that I never really opened again. Yeah. So I really like this, and it's a really great tool that I found doesn't just apply to software; it can apply to anything in terms of moving the work forward. Right? For years, right, I thought ADHD was something I had to overcome, but the truth, right, ADHD has led me to practices that don't just help me, but they make work better for everyone. Small steps, externalized thinking, structured collaboration. These aren't just survival strategies for me. They're solid practices that create clarity, instill quality, reduce cognitive load, and make teams stronger. So, yeah, I still forget my coffee, but I've learned to work with my brain instead of against that, and that makes all the difference. So, thank you. Thank you. Questions, comments, commiseration?
I have a question.
Yes.
Um, so as someone who is not a developer, not an engineer, I'm a program manager, how can those of us outside of the developer role make sure that we are supporting processes and practices and coaching that help with neurodivergence and don't make things more complicated for you?
Yeah. And I think this is something that I like again, I sort of wrote a bunch of blog posts that kind of are go along with this, a companion to this, I guess. And I was realizing when I was writing, like, the one thing that I think you can do is ask. Now, you got to be aware that people need to sort of they need to be comfortable with telling you, right? So you have to kind of give it that, like, is there anything that would help you? Right? You can't walk up to anybody and go like, I know you have ADHD, so because uh, often there's a chance that they don't know it, especially unfortunately, I think in the software industry tends to sort of I don't know, attract more of us. I don't want to say that, but that seems like I run into a lot more people in this industry. Um, yeah, and I don't know why. We're really good at pattern matching.
Pattern
Maybe
matching and
that's it.
logical thinking. We're
Yes.
attracted to STEM. It's 100%
Yes.
true.
That and so I don't like what what would be it's really hard because again, if you had come to me um before I got diagnosed, before I was taking medication. Oh, I took those slides out. Dang. Um uh Medication changed everything for me. Oh my gosh. My life rotated 180 degrees and I didn't want to take medication. And so a lot of the stuff that I talk about, a lot of the things when I talk about how it affected my work, it affected my work in sort of the before medication times. Um, that being said, if you had come to me in that time and said, "Hey, how can I help? What would make this easier?" Like my RSD would be like, "Yeah, well, you're probably what you're saying is that I can't do it myself." And it was weird and it's unfortunate, and that's just how I would react. And maybe others will, and maybe others won't. I can't really talk for them, but um, I don't know.
If I could add some
Yeah,
thoughts on that, because you got me thinking a lot here, Paige. Um, you know, when Paige, when you were talking about some of the traits that you have, I recognize that in myself. I was tested in high school and they said I was borderline, but that was a lot
you
of
are
years ago and things
borderline.
have changed.
Yeah.
Um, but I I find myself often asking myself when I'm getting scattered, what problem am I trying to solve right now? Because a problem well defined is a problem half solved. Uh, but I've also recognized that when I really pay attention to all the people in the organization I work with, I see that being one of the biggest issues that I recognize in businesses. Um, and I think that having a strong focus on the why and the what and not just the how from your position season is really, really important. One of the things that I've been kind of working on is actors, um, aspirations, and actions. So the actor is the who, the aspiration is the thing that they want to do, the ultimate thing, right? Like I want to save for retirement. The actions is I have to log in, I have to connect my bank account, I have to set up a monthly transfer, like those little steps that with Paige's window, they keep getting broken down smaller and smaller. And so often when I go into a team, people are talking at a very granular level, and the context is just assumed. And when I started to pay attention to it more, I thought I was the dummy, that everybody on the team, especially when I was in and out of teams as coaches, I just assumed everybody had all the context. And when I started asking questions more, I realized no, they don't. They don't. They have a hard time describing things as boulders and breaking it into rocks and pebbles and sand and dust. And some people are just not comfortable with saying, what the heck is this rock that we're trying to work with here? They're just dealing with those little pieces. So for me, I think having that guidance and also being vulnerable to say, I don't really know what's going on. I'm going to ask a stupid question like, who are we doing this for? You might find that a lot of people can't answer it. So even to break it down and like Paige's discovery trees, um, I did that with the team I'm on right now. Our
Yeah.
Scrum Master was gone on maternity leave in January, And I'd been with the team for a few months, and finally, when I got back from Christmas break, I just started organizing all this stuff in the tool that we're using, like Jira. And all of a sudden people started looking at it and they go, oh, okay, so that's all for the admin portal and that's all for the customer portal. Okay, I just saw that we have to do this integration, but I don't know what it's for.
Mm.
So what I think I'm hearing is helping to arrive at context is an important role for those who may be outside of the direct development process. And I'm also hearing, wherever possible, fostering a culture of safety where people have the space to discover what their needs are and to be
Yes.
able to speak them.
Yes. Yeah. And I honestly, now, and I mean, this is the best thing about talking about this is that I'm realizing, you know, like things like collaborative programming, if I didn't feel safe, I never would have done it because, oh my gosh, they're going to find out that I am an imposter. Right? And it's really a horrible feeling. And so why would I want to do that when I can just go in my little hidey hole cave and come out with the super amazing package in 3 days? That's, it's crappy software, but you know what? It doesn't matter because I'm delivering it. Right? Why would I do this sort of thing? Well, now I could tell you why, because it's immensely more powerful and it's better for me. But I wouldn't have gotten there without being in a place where I was okay, felt safe, felt okay making a mistake, felt okay saying I don't know, wasn't, there was no negative to sort of not being the norm or the expected norm. Right. And so maybe making that place, there's a great, I wonder, is it Jessica Care that talks about semanthicism and artists, and it's like great art isn't made. What happens is great art is just a place where they just make a place where it can happen, and it does. This same sort of thing. If you want these great practices, not just for neurodivergent type peoples, but for good quality code and high performing code and great teams and safety, you have to make that place where it can exist, right? And just like Julie, I see your hand up. The one other thing that I would highly recommend is find a coach, right? And it's it sounds sort of self-serving when I say it, I guess, but we can't just read a book and do it. We can't just watch a presentation and go like, oh, I'm going to go back and make things safe, right? You need someone who can help you, like Dustin, like several of us here, that can help you and say, that was great. Did you think maybe we should try this too? Or can we suggest this? Or, like that's the job, right? We don't just go out as a group of people and play baseball in Little League. We have a coach who's there telling us, put your, step, lean and point at the point when you throw the ball, keep your eye on the ball when you swing, like all that sort of thing. So that would be the other thing. And Julie.
Okay, I was listening to you and I forgot what I was talking about for a second. Actually, the first thing that I was thinking of was that when Ellis raised his hand, my instinct was to like do the pointy thing to indicate that he was next, because the last time I saw him, we were together in a circle. I miss us. I wanted to respond to Season's question also, because it triggered a bunch of things for me as I was listening to people's answers. And if I remember, the gist of it was, as a non-dev, how do I get my teams, how do I respectfully approach them to find out what do you need in order for me to support you, is the gist of it, right? Okay. So, and then Paige was talking about how the practice of ensemble programming is inherently helps keep that thought bubble going. And like everybody holds that space, and that it develops all this stuff, and it helps you with your ADHD, but also that magic quality that makes us problem solvers and puzzle solvers also tends to make us highly introverted. And if you approach a group of developers as a whole and go, hey, it would be great for your ADHD if we were to mob program, that probably is gonna fail. So I'm that person. I'm 100% that person. And I've terrified many a dev with my approach. And what I've learned is we can put two things together that helps. And one of you already said one of them, which is have a why. Is like we're solving a problem. Like our cycle time is too long, and we're going to get together just for a couple hours and see if we can just hack through this really fast. Or there's a Sev 1, right? Whatever that impetus is to do the experiment, and that's the second part of it, is do an experiment and then get feedback. How was that for you? Was that awful to be swarming? Most people imagine that they are going to hate that experience, and it is draining, but they don't tend to actually hate it. They're like, wow, we were super productive and I learned. So that's a way in. It seems, I want to say this too, and then I'll let Ellis go. It seems manipulative if you think that you know what's good for somebody, and then you have a tool that you can use to make that outcome more likely. But I think this is super interesting, so I've studied it. It's only manipulation if your goals are not aligned with the other person's goals. It's influence if you are aligning your goals to the other person's goals. So as long as their goal is to have high focus and great quality and learning, then we can probably do an experiment. So don't beat yourself up just because you know a tool doesn't make it manipulation. The end.
Ellis?
Yeah, so I'm gonna kind of go about answering this I'm not a lead person. I've never led a software team before, but at least from my perspective of being a very neurospicy person and what I would like, one of the ways to foster psychological safety that I've found I really like is fostering an environment where questions are not just like expected, but rewarded. I am terrible at asking for help and asking for questions. That makes the imposter syndrome kick so hard. So being rewarded for just like, why the hell are we doing this again? What's the actual scope of this? Is incredibly good for my brain. And then when you get that group of actually like people who are all just working on the same thing, that makes it infinitely better of just like, we're doing this because of this, right? Okay, yep, cool. And it takes half a second and we're back on track. So
Yeah, Kylan.
Paige, thank you so much for the wonderful talk. I'm leaving that in. And thank you everybody for attending today. Hope to see more of you at our next meetings, and I suck at this. Goodbye, I guess.
Awesome. Thank you.
Thank you. Nice.
That was the most authentic thank you and goodbye I have ever seen at a meetup.